So in high school, I did wrestling. How many of you guys have done wrestling before? Yeah? I loved wrestling. I did it for 3 years. My dad made me do it the first year, and he made me do it the second year. I chose to do it the third year, and he also made my brother do it his first year. So my brother and I were 2 years apart, and I'm a junior, he's a freshman, and wrestling is exhausting. If you've ever done wrestling, you know afterwards you're winded, especially if you haven't worked out in a long time, and you're exhausted. In the beginning of the season, I hadn't gotten up to that condition yet, and so I decided, I wisened up a little bit. I brought 2 waters with me for after practice. And my brother said, "Hey, can you give me a water?" And I was like, "Sure," because I'm a nice brother. Us older siblings, we know, we take care of our brothers, we get them 1 water. And so, track with me here. Numbers game, 2 for me, 1 for him. 2 for me, 1 for him. So we go through wrestling practice. We run across the room. We're doing our drills. We do live practice, and afterwards, 3 hours later, we're exhausted. We're sitting in the changing room, and he's like, "Hey, can I have my water?" I'm like, "Sure, here you go." I give him his water, his 1 water, and I get my first water. And I go to put my clothes into the bin, and I turn around, and what do you think happened? He finished his first water, and he's on my second water. And so I do what any 17-year-old boy, after wrestling practice, exhausted and just frustrated at his brother, would do. I punch him in the stomach as fast as I can. I learned this from my dad. Boom, 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 boom. Right? My dad would tell stories about this, and I just kind of caught on. And boom, 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 boom. And then he returns. He gets his breath, and he goes right in my face. Right in my face. I go, "Ah!" I back up. And right then, right before we're about to just go for round 2 of wrestling, my coach comes in and says, "Knock it off. Sit down. Keep it at home. Keep that stuff at home." And he uses different language, but I couldn't say that today. And so we sat down, still exhausted. We were now embarrassed because our coach had seen us fight. My dad never let us fight growing up, and so this was the first real fight that we ever had. And this was in front of all of our teammates too, and it was embarrassing. And as I look back on this time, as I look back on this event, I'm asking myself, who really won? Like afterwards, this was a fight. It was a real, we fists were thrown. But who won? At the very end, we were both worse off than before. Neither of us got as much water as we wanted. And we just sat there embarrassed. And so today, I want you to I don't know if you have a story of something similar where somebody took something from you or somebody did something to you and you retaliated and then nobody won. Right? When you try to get even. Actually, can you show the next slide? I meant to show this picture of me and my brother. We're on. Don't we look so nice? We look like we actually love each other, don't we? Man. Yeah, I love my brother. But anyways, maybe you guys can relate, especially siblings, where they did something to you, they took something from you, you retaliated, and it ended off worse before, and you're asking yourself, who won that battle? Who won that little spat? And today we're going to look at a story in the Bible that ends with that same question. So you can turn with me to Genesis 34. I don't have the verses on the screen. I'm going to share the story. You can follow along with me to keep track, but just for time's sake, just so you get out on time and go to lunch on time. Can I get an amen? So I'm gonna share this story, and you guys should just keep me accountable with your Bible. So turn with me to Genesis 34, and if you can imagine with me, we're going to go back thousands and thousands of years. The book of Genesis is a very old document, and it's an ancient history. It's an ancient document, and so we're going to go to this ancient desert land. And to our main characters of this story, this is also a new land. And this main family that we've been following, that Genesis has been following for a couple chapters now, it's their great-grandkids. And one of the children of Jacob, her name is Dinah, goes into this new land to meet some friends. She wants some girlfriends. She wants to have some friends in this new area, so she goes, she's meeting with them, she's talking to them, getting to know their stories. While she's doing that, along comes this guy named Shechem. Shechem is a ruler of the land. He's the ruler of the area. Him and his dad, he's next in line, and he sees Dinah and says, I want that woman. I want that woman. And so what he does is he takes her against her will. And in the process, he falls in love with her. And says, I want this woman as my wife. And so he says, Dad, let's go to this woman's father and make a deal. I want this woman as my wife. And so they go to Jacob and say, Jacob, we know that you're new here, and here's a deal that we want to offer you. I love your daughter, Dinah. I want her as my wife. And what I'd love to do, what I'd love to offer you is I'd love to offer you my land. In fact, let's intermarry. Like my people will marry your people will marry my people. We'll become one group. We'll make trades. My stuff will be your stuff will be my stuff. It's a win-win for both of us. And in fact, if that's not enough for you, here's a blank check. Fill it out, and I will pay them out. All I ask is for your wife, or is for Dinah to be my wife. And Jacob's sons, Dinah's brothers, are in the negotiations here, and they're furious. They heard what happened. They heard that Shechem took Dinah against her will, right? And they are furious, as some of you guys might be, right? We can relate to this frustrating thing that somebody did something, as the text says, a thing that should not have been done. And they're furious. Not only are they furious, they're very crafty. See, their dad, Jacob, was a crafty guy, and they're crafty too. And so they go to Shechem and say, Shechem, hey, we heard the deal. It sounds really great. One thing. It's not a small thing. Our great-grandpa, Abraham, has a covenant with God. He had a covenant with God, and God said, as a mark of this covenant, all of the men that you beget will be circumcised. And so Shechem asked, what's that? And they explain, this is what it is. He's like, okay. And Dinah's brothers say to him, here's the deal. We will only intermarry with you. We will only join people with you if you also take on this mark, also take on this process. And so Shechem thinks about it, says, okay. He immediately runs to his city and says, hey guys, these people, Jacob and his family, they're friends of ours. They're friends. We can trust them. What we're going to do is we're going to undergo this procedure. He explains the procedure. The guys are like, and he says, we're going to undergo this procedure. We're going to become one with their people. We're going to make trades with them. And we're both going to grow as a group. All you need to do is undergo this one procedure. And the guys of the city say, all right, Shechem, we trust you. We trust you. We're going to do that. And so 3 days later, after they undergo the surgery, they're recovering. And Dinah's brothers come in, and they slay all of the men. They kill Shechem and every last man in the city. And not only do they do that, but they take all of their animals, all of their jewelry, any other possession, all their women, and all their children away as plunder. The end. What? Like, I don't know. If you guys have never heard that story, if you've never read that story in the Bible, you're probably with me as when I first read that passage. Like, what the heck is going on here? Why is this story in the Bible? And I love weird Bible stories. Right now in the middle school, we're going through weird Bible stories of the Bible. Because when we ask a new believer to read their Bible, when we ask a middle schooler to read their Bible, 34 chapters into the book of Genesis, they're going to read this story and wonder, what does this have to do with how to live my life? And what does this have to do with what it means to be a Christian? And so today we're going to look at this story. And after we look at this story in light of my story, maybe your story, and then we look at it in light of who Jesus is and what Jesus did, we might just come away with a different understanding of this weird Bible story. So, again, who won? So I want to give, there's four things that kind of happen in the story that kind of can relate with your story and my story, and that's this. First one is, there's a violation. There's a thing that is done that should not have been done. Right? Shechem takes Dinah. The lighter way of saying it is that he violated her. He did a thing that should not have been done. Maybe in your life, somebody has done something to you that should not have been done. Right? They cut me off in traffic. That should not have been done. Right? That person started a rumor about me that wasn't true. That should not have been done. That boss that I had laid me off for no good reason. That should not have been done. That person left me with my kids and their kids and never came back. That should not have been done. Right? We can, if we had time, every single one of us could share a story of something that happened in our lives that should not have been done. There's a violation that happened. The second thing is this, that justice is demanded. When somebody does something wrong to you, when a wrong is done, justice is demanded. Not only is justice demanded, it's deserved. Right? This is why we have a court system. If somebody breaks the law, justice wins. Right? I fought the law and the... Yeah. You guys understand me here. Right? Justice is demanded. When a wrong is done, justice is demanded. But because they couldn't get back what was owed, the third thing happened, retaliation. There was a retaliation. We sought justice on our own terms. When my brother drank my water, I couldn't get my water back. And so I paid him, I made him pay back what he owed by punching him. Right? You might have other stories. Dinah's brothers, the way that they retaliated is they killed the whole city. All the men in the city, and they took everything else. And number 4, there's no clear winner here. We might say, Jacob's sons got more in the end, but did they really help out their sister? No. In fact, in the book of Deuteronomy, a couple chapters later, or a couple books later, God gives a law to Israelites saying if a woman is violated and she's unmarried, then the person who did the violating, they have to pay a sum of money. They have to marry this woman to ensure that she isn't an outcast in society, and he cannot ever divorce her. That was God's way of dealing with this specific circumstance. But Jacob's sons, they didn't know about this law, and so they killed everyone, and there's no clear winner. And again, I'm sure many of you guys may not be able to relate with this. Maybe not. But I know I can. And for those of you who can't, let's talk a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. Again, when a wrong thing is done, justice is deserved. There's a sense that you owe me. Right? You have done a wrong to me, you owe me. You can think of somebody in your mind and say, they owe me some freedom. They kept me locked up for a long time. They kept me held up in emotional garbage. You owe me a marriage that collapsed. You owe me a job. You owe me a promotion. You owe me my spot in line. You owe me my seat at church. The list goes on and on. We can go down the list, right? You owe me the time that I wasted on you. You owe me the words that I said. You owe me the truth because you lied to me. And again, it's this cycle of a justice is demanded. Wrong is done and a justice is demanded. But here's the problem. What if what is owed cannot be repaid? If I spend a long time with somebody, and I give my life to them, and then they leave me, can they give me back the time that was wasted? If somebody said something to me that undermined my sense of security, can they give me that security back? Can they give me back what they took from me? That's the problem we face. That's why we try to seek justice on our own terms. And what we do, one of two things. This is a non-Christ-like model. One of two things. First is we get payback with something else, like I did. I was punching my brother to try to get payback. Dinah's brothers ransacked the city to get payback because they couldn't pay what was due. I hear stories of so-and-so cheated on me, so I'm going to break their car. I'm going to smash their car down. And the list goes on and on. We find retaliation with something else. Or the second thing we do is we hold it inside. We hold it inside, and it just begins to build. You know, I'm sure you guys haven't heard this thing called passive-aggressivism, right? Passive-aggressive. It's when you're angry at somebody because they did something wrong, and you're going to find subtle ways to tell them that they're in trouble without actually telling them they're in trouble. So you'll, let's say they didn't do the dishes, so you just won't do the dishes. In fact, you'll make comments like, the dishes are dirty. Wonder who's going to do them. Right? Oh, the laundry's not done. Right? Or maybe more serious things like, no, I won't ever talk to that person again. Like, I'm just going to avoid them. You know, I'm going to walk around them. I'm going to look the other way because they did something to me, or they said something about me. And neither option is what Christ would want from us. And in fact, Jesus tells a story in Matthew 18 about debt. He tells a story about debt. And he tells a story about a king who's collecting debts. And this guy comes up to him. His name's Doug. We'll just call him Doug. I don't know, his actual name's Doug. It's probably more Greek than that. But he comes up to King and the king says, you owe me $1 billion. An amount that Doug could never make in his entire lifetime. And Doug gets on his knees. He gets on his knees and says, "O king, I cannot repay this debt. Don't throw me in prison. Please don't sell my wife and kid into slavery. Give me time. I will pay back this debt. I will pay back this debt." And the king has mercy on him. He took pity on him and said, "All right, Doug, I like you. I'm going to get rid of the debt here. You're free to go." And Doug goes on his way, and he's walking along, and then he meets Jim. Jim's a co-worker of his, another servant in the king's palace, and Doug goes up to Jim and chokes him out and says, "Jim, you owe me $100. $100, that's hard. It'd be hard to come up with on the spot, right? But you can pay it back in a month, maybe a year." And he chokes Jim out and says, "You owe me $100. And Jim says, I'm sorry. I'll pay you back in time." And Jim says this, Doug says this, "No, not good enough. I'm going to throw you into prison until you pay it back." And when the king hears about Doug and what Doug did, he goes to Doug and says, "Doug, you wicked servant, I forgave you $1 billion, and you couldn't forgive this guy a little bit. And I want to share with you another person that might understand relational debt. I'll come back to this story in just a second. This guy named Paul. Paul understood what it was like to be on the other side of relational debt. He understood what it's like to be on the other side of doing a wrong to somebody and owing them a lot. Just picture the person in your mind that you're frustrated with. Paul was worse than that. He killed Christians before he became one. And so he had to stand before Christians, friends, or people whose family members he had killed, and say, I'm sorry, my life has changed, I'm a Christian now. And he had to sit before them as someone who owed very much. And this is what he says in the book of Ephesians. He's talking to some Christians. He says this, what do we do? Like, we're wondering, what do we do with all this anger that we have? He says, just throw it off, get away with it. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Get rid of it. That bitterness that you're holding on to against person A, person B, person C, people who have wronged you, get rid of that bitterness. Get rid of the rage, get rid of the anger, get rid of the brawling and the slander, along with every form of malice. He goes on. Be kind and compassionate to one another instead. And he says this line right after. He says, forgiving one another. See, that story that Jesus told, he was addressing Peter, who said, how many times, if somebody wrongs me, if somebody owes me something, how many times should I forgive them? How many times should I cancel this debt that they owe me? And Jesus tells a story to explain it. And Paul, he knows he's asking for a lot. You might be thinking, well, Sam, you don't know what they did for me. You don't know what they took from me. You don't know the amount that they owe me. And I've been holding on to this anger for all of my life. I've been holding on to this rage and this bitterness and this malice for all of this time. You don't know what they owe me. How could you ask me to forgive them? And I'm not asking you to forgive them. Paul is. Take it up with him. But Paul goes on one step further. He says, forgiving one another. Next. Forgiving one another just as in Christ God forgave you. When Jesus told this story, the king was him. Right? Jesus is the king of that story. He forgave us so much. When I'm before God and all my sins are laid before Him, every wrongdoing that I've done, every sin that I've committed, you just pile on memory after time. And the debt that I accumulated before God is so great that nothing that could ever be done to me will surpass that. Right? And if we're Christ followers, those of us in here who have been saved by Jesus, those of us in here who have been redeemed and all of our sins, past, present, and future, have been forgiven, who are we to hold a wrong against them when we could just give the case to God instead? And so, to kind of close out, I want to show you guys the cycle of forgiveness. Next one. Cycle of forgiveness. It's just 4 steps here. 1, identify who you're angry with. Who are you angry with? Put a name to it. Put a face to it. With my mentor that I that I was with in Reading, he had me write down a whole list of people. He made me think through who wronged you. Put a name to it. The second one is this: determine what they owe you. You can't cancel a debt if you don't know what is owed. 3, cancel the debt. And this will take time. I don't want to belittle the wrongs that have been done against you or the wrongs that have been done against me. It's a serious deal. Do this with a small group, maybe, or with a pastor. And then 4 is this: dismiss the case. It's a daily decision to say, I'm not going to let what they did control the rest of my life. And as we work through this cycle of forgiveness, as every day when we come across people who have wronged us, may we, instead of harboring anger against them, wanting to punch them, may we instead choose to pray for them and seek the best for them. So